business card, and they put it together, core values, God and family come first. Well, that came from my dad. And my dad was in World War I. He's a Corps of Engineers, stayed over there. And when World War II came, he was like 48 years old, and he went to sign up. I mean, 4 kids at home and leave my mom at home, and he's going to sign up and go in the Army, And they wanted him to, they said, well, look, you've got all this experience, you're an attorney, go into some war plant, and use that experience, and it will be most valuable there. And so had a partner, and I don't know what his arrangement was with his partner, but closed up his end of the business, went to work at North American Aviation for less than half of what he was making. So, that's where it really comes from. And he always, tithing would you just gave and you gave. It wasn't a tithe so much as a stewardship. And a tithe is the 10th, but a stewardship's what you do with everything you've got. And he was just a very giving person. So we got it from there. I mean, I just took that, and all I did was take what he'd given me and passed on to them. And then we had so many entanglements, people would say, and I can meander all over the place, but how did you end up, with Carol in the Sudan and the refugee camps, where people are dying every day? And I'm thinking back, and I said, well, I was in the counterintelligence corps in the Army in Japan, and they had a number of sisters there that ran a school. And the sisters ran the school, and they had teachers, and right at the end of World War II, there was a huge land takeover by the Russians, at Manchuria. Mm-hmm. Everybody that they put in one camp, they indoctrinate them to come back and be an agent, for them. Well, one of these teachers at this Catholic school is a communist who'd been indoctrinated, but he had much stronger ties to the sisters than to the communists. So I was getting all kinds of information in that. And I was a local hero in CIC. I was getting information nobody else was getting, Well, my dad and Hugh Downey this is another fellow in Kansas City, we're good friends. And I told Dad, if you could get some checks over here, because the yen had no standing in international currency. So if you're a businessman and you wanted to buy a piece of equipment, you couldn't buy it with yen. Now, it traded locally, and maybe if you had a dollar US, it'd be worth $10 locally if, it just brought it into the economy and deposited it on a bank. But if a businessman needed to get a piece of equipment or something, he might pay $15 or $20. So actually, they were sending all the money over to his operating on the black market, so to speak, with the businessman. Then fast forward 12 years later, and Hugh Downey's son is in Eritrea, which was a missile tracking station. Haile Selassie was in Ethiopia. And he ran into some priests, and they were doing their, good deeds there. And he wrote his dad and said, if you could get some money, we could really do all of these different things. And so his dad went to my dad and said, well, can we get the same mailing list? And so they mailed it out. My dad became the first president of La Lamba. I came in sometime later, and for 25 years was the chairman of the board. In the course of all that, why we raised, I guess their budget's $300,000-400,000, and we've got orphanages for children whose both parents have died of AIDS. We were in Eritrea, and the communists drove us out, went over to refugee camps, and that's how we got to the Sudan. So, all of these things, one tail leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And so I was in the counterintelligence corps, and he was in the special services, and you know, got on a plane one day 20 years ago with Abbott Gregory, and we talked about doing something for conception, and we built this CORE, C-O-R-E, Celebrate Our Religious Enthusiastically, and without going all the way through it, we have this event for the priests. And a couple years ago, it started out as a golf event. We had a couple of 3 or 4 foursomes was the way we did it first. Then it got to where we'd have 200 plus people, and we had a big dinner, and it was all here, right here. Carol did the whole thing, you know, in this house. And a couple years ago, we had 5 bishops, 2 abbots, 125, you know, priests or something. We give Spiro Aventikakis at Peter's Clothing, you know, the best in town. We get $900 suits for $300, and we've given over 200 suits to priests. We have vacation places. We give, you know, and it just started as a chance meeting on an airplane, you know, with the abbot. So all of these entanglements, you know, and with the boys, I just thought they ought to learn how to work. I figured if I could teach them to work, their average intelligence, at least, and maybe not, but they would work their way out of anything they ever got into. There's no way you can give them enough money to last their lifetime. And with my usual, I don't know, brusque, arrogant way, I thought, we'll go cut trees. So they're 10 and 13 years old, and they got chainsaws. And they're out cutting trees, $55 a cord. And we're hauling them back, and it's a wonder we weren't all killed. We've got a trailer full of wood, pulling it with you know, with a pickup and station wagon, and everybody is helping us. I mean, Sean almost he didn't tell you. You had a Ford tractor and was climbing a tree. And
yeah, if you want to know that story, what happened is we would cut down. We were clearing out for a customer. He had a field in Freeman, Kansas, and so we were clearing out. He was going to make a lake, so we would cut it down, and then we'd cut the logs into like 10-foot sections or something like that, and we'd hook a chain up around it, and then we'd drag them out with the tractor, and we'd cut them into log size, and then we'd split them on a hydraulic splitter, and and this was just, I don't know how old I was. I wasn't, I don't know, 14, 15 years old, and I was driving the tractor that day, and the tractor the log got caught, so the tractor started going up like that, and with Matt and Dad standing there watching with their eyes wide open, it was about to fall down on top of his oldest son and kill me. And fortunately, the chain broke, and it went down. Now, I learned later all you have to do is push the clutch in, and those wheels will stop going, but when you're 14 years old, you don't think that clearly. So that was one story. The other story I remember was when we were driving back with the station wagon hauling 2 cords of firewood. So that would have been, I don't know how many thousands of pounds. The trailer weighed more than the car probably. We're going on Holmes Road. It's a 2-lane road, and all of a sudden that trailer starts going like that side to side, and then it's going, you know, screeching the wheels on both sides, and Dad's driving down the middle of the highway, and Matt, who's probably, I don't know, 11 or 12, is sitting in the back seat going, oh shit, oh shit. And Dad got the car under control and pulled it over the side of the road, and he turns around and he said, what were you saying, Matt? But we lived, so yeah, barely.
So what kind of station wagon was it?
Oh, it was your standard Chevy, wasn't it? Like with the
Yeah.
panels on the
Panels on the
side, you know. I mean, it was
What, like the
it was
fake-
the family.
The fake wood stuff.
Yeah,
you mean?
yeah, exactly. It was like the family car, you know. So, but we hauled firewood in it on the weekends.
Did it have the third seat in it that opens
Yeah.
backwards?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I always like that. That's where you stick, you know.
the bad kids.
The
Yeah.
gasoline and
And
the
grandma.
chainsaw.
Yeah.
Grandma.
Graham.
Well, and Carol would stay home and pray. That was her. I said, you just stay out of it, you know.
I would
And-
pray. No kidding.
And kind of carrying that down, and it's sort of. Carol's brother ran for mayor, Joe Shaughnessy. We've always had a beer account someplace, and it happened to be at the Sullivans. They had Falstaff Brewery. They had an old beer truck, and they were getting rid of it, and we bought it, and then we, took that beer truck and colored red and black. That was Joe Shaughnessy. Went around town, Shaughnessy for mayor.
After we hauled wood in it.
After we'd hauled wood in it. And then we have these priests who are friends of ours out in Colorado, and we didn't have any use for the truck anymore. And they had some Dominican nuns, and they said if we could just, have some chainsaws and that, we could haul wood and do all these things. So they came in town, and we went out and talked to this guy from Smith Lawn and Tree and told him, he was a Mason, we're Catholics. He gives us 2 or 3 saws, fixes them all up, gets involved in an accident, almost dies. I go see him in the hospital, and he's dying. He said, you think those nuns or sisters or whatever could pray for me? I'm on my way out. And he lives. And so here goes the Shaughnessy for mayor, black and red, orange and black with chainsaws out across Kansas at 45 miles an hour because it had a governor on it. So, I mean, everything leads to something else. And then Matt
What's that
and
guy's name again, Dad? That Smith on a tree.
I can't, and I was trying to think of it. His name wasn't Smith, but these priests are friends of ours, and we had another friend out there, and I would send the boys. I'd put them on a bus, and they'd go out to Colorado and stay for 6 weeks with this guy, who was an engineer from Rolla School of Mines, and what did he eat? Pepsi Cola and potato chips and something like that, and they stayed with him for 6 weeks. I had no idea what they were doing out there, and I just turned them loose. I mean, they were on their own so much of their life, God will take care of them. But
One time I didn't have a
Not
ride home.
completely.
I didn't have a ride home. Remember, we had to hitchhike home. That was fun from Colorado. So, but
I
How
don't
old were you
remember that.
How old were you, Sean?
16.
I was 16. Yeah,
Not old enough.
yeah.
of age.
So what was this
Guardian
obsession with terrorizing Avila?
Nope.
Oh, now you're
You
getting
know.
into this. Has nothing to do with him. We just were young kids who had nothing else to do, so
So you throw them all
we
out.
created our own fun. Yeah, yeah.
Were you aware, Bob? Were you aware of any of the things that they were doing across the street over here at the Avila?
No.
Oh, he was giving money to Apple at the time. We were
Paying for damages.
Thanks for damages on the
When we used
landscape.
to get in trouble, our punishment would be you'd have to jog around Avila a certain amount of times. That would be the punishment. Man would get his done right away. Teresa'd cry for 2 days and then go do it.
I learned the difference in, male, female. I can remember one time Treese and Matt did something. I said, okay, around Avila. Matt gets up, runs around Avila. Treese starts crying. Matt comes in, he's run all the way around Avila. Treese is still crying.
The other girl.
But there you have lots and lots of tales that we were not a part of because the girls sneaking out and coming down, on the side of the house. And
Obviously,
was-
grandchildren
oh,
are gonna see.
the grandchildren, edit that.
We'll take that out.
We all have alarms on our house now. We'd hear when.
But if you go back, way back, my dad's father, who was a much older man when he had my dad, actually they lived at Fort Leavenworth, and one of his jobs was that he was a wagon master on the wagon trains that went from Fort Leavenworth to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they would be out on the trail, months and months at a time. Most common cause of death, stomach ache. Because what happened is they get out, they didn't have doctors, it ruptured appendix.
No.
And they'd be out, 3, 4, 5. Can you imagine driving, a wagon train 1,000 miles? But anyway,
What years were those?
well, that'd been the turn of 1900, the turn of the century.
Yeah, but
you know.
see, you those only went maybe 20, 22 miles a day.
Oh, absolutely. And that was a good day.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you'd come to a stream, and the stream would, they didn't have all the bridges and everything, and you'd break an axle, and of course they had, but it was, and they did still have Indians out there, although that they didn't play that up as being a big thing. But all these things, one thing leads to another, when we started the priest deal, the group I was organized with didn't believe they aren't money raising or prayerful. So I just opened up an account, put it on my name on it, Everybody wrote the checks to Conception, paid all the bills, and sent the money up to Conception. And after a while, that got a little bit big. Everybody gets nervous about that. I mean, if you're a miller. So, these entanglements, they talked about them, and we,
Homes from the heart.
well, Homes from the Heart, a friend of mine married a Salvadorian. They had a couple of earthquakes down there, and don't ask me why. He said, well, let's go see what we can do. So he and another friend of mine, a fellow named Ron Ward, who has their family has a aluminum forming business. They pour concrete with forms. And we went down there and made some contacts. Then we had Nancy Jockins, who is a lady attorney here in town, and a friend who went down there to die, this Michael Bonder, who is about just one weird individual. I mean, he is something else. And he went there to die, and he hadn't died yet. And he found out I was dying, but put him into tears. He said, I'm supposed to die first. And we got some contracts and some other things. There were money coming in, international charities, and they'd have about 3,900, 4,000. Well, all of these organizations took a third off the top for administration, and then you're supposed to build the house with what was left, which couldn't be done, and everybody's going broke. So we went down there, and we did a cost minus. And whatever amount of money we got, we went out and asked people for that much money, and ended up building, 300, and they're talking about maybe 500 or something like that, homes over a period of time. We even had a unique experience. Remember Patch Adams?
Sure.
Patch Adams came down there, and we built a couple of clinics for him. Robin Williams, who's 5'8", and Patch Adams is about 6'3" with a long ponytail. And he said, if you think that, he's weird in the movie, he says, you got to really see him. He is really weird. So we're having a meeting here tonight because I got to turn that over, and the boys are going to have, because I write the letter. I didn't do anything. One guy, had contacts down in El Salvador, and another one had the forms, to send it, and another one got the attorney, and another one, the builder went down with equipment. All I did was raise money. I'd write letters, and I'm very expensive to know sometimes.
And
So-
how about those cars that were on top of that building over in the El Salvador?
Oh, well, there was a junkyard. That's where we built it. And these were cars stacked on top of cars. And they were so deep, they had actual one-story building they didn't even know was down underneath all these cars. And so we're down there in one of the toughest, Soyapango, right outside of El Salvador, San Salvador. And we're having trouble with the guy next, these lots and everything. And this guy was about to chase our guy off with a machete, and all this, and we'll go over one night. It's about 9 o'clock, it's dark, and can be. And I said, "Where's this guy that is gonna get you with the bolo or the machete?" He's right there. He's sitting on a porch about from here to that wall, and can't we walk a little faster? But I tried to get my grandchildren, to take them to a third world country, and I got some of them down, but I think I'll run out of steam before I run out of grandchildren. But
Well, we heard all the stories about Sean's son Ryan going down with Grandpa and, paying people off. It was a little scary to send your kid down with Grandpa to El Salvador and.
well, they had.
Unfortunately, you don't give the money, you don't give a supervisor over there the money to pay the workers off. You better,
You make sure it gets to where it's going. They had
yeah.
one
With an
fellow.
armed vehicle, right?
Well, we
Someone
weren't
was-
armed.
You weren't, but somebody was on that truck.
Well, we went out and
Well, that's the way Ryan told me.
we went down to this town to visit a priest that we knew, and Pepsi-Cola truck pulls up, driver jumps out, starts loading the thing, and the guy gets out on the other side and he's got a shotgun, and I call him the street sweeper because it has 7 shells, and you start hearing you go bam, 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 bam. By the time you get to the other side, there ain't nobody in the street. And he said, "Grandpa, what are they doing?" And he said, "Well, they're delivering it." And I said, "Well, why have the guns?" And I said, "Well, if they know you've got money and all of these are cash deals, why, they'll rob you." And I had told him before, I said, "Now, we got $2,500, but they don't know we've got it. But I don't want you to go." I just wanted to go. I didn't ask Sean, I asked. And so anyway, he thought that was great. And we go there, and of course, they unload the vehicle and everything. And we go out to this little village, and the dirt floors and everything. And we go to Pablo or whatever it was, and he'd paid the coyotes to get his son in illegally. Paid him $2,500, and the only way he could do it is he borrowed the money from local villagers. And I said, "Where'd they get it?" Well, one of the chief sources of revenue in El Salvador is the monies that's sent from the states down there. So they were lending him money at 10% interest a month. And so anyway, we get the $2,500. We're out there. We walk through the village, and I said, "Well, do you just give them money?" Jack says, "Oh no, you don't give them the money. You go with him and you take the money to these different people." We all paid up. "Yep." "You need a receipt?" "Nope." So we went from one to the other, got it all paid off. And then we're driving back from there to town, and Ryan is kind of sick. So I get in the back end of the truck, and Jack, kind soul that he is, here's 3 guys with machetes, and they are the raunchiest looking guy. Jack says, and he's fluent, "Jack, you want to ride?" And I'm sitting back there with these 3 machete wielding guys, and I'm thinking, "Come on, oh Jack, come on." So anyway, we got down the road to wherever we were going, and we got back, and we had a couple of other experiences, where Ryan, who was somewhat impressionable as a 16-year-old would do, we went and run a room where they were going to store some goods, and we're over in one corner, and Ryan said, "What are those things?" And he they were bats. There were a gazillion of them.
Bats.
And I want to tell you,
Bats.
they just all, how they all do like that. They were all hanging from the ceiling in this little storage room. And Ryan went bonkers. So, and then he goes down, and we went to a shopping center, and they have, it's like Stalag 17, literally. They've got a raised elevated platform like a coach would have to look out on the playing field, or you got in a prison, and where the guys were up there were armed, and the stories he came back, he didn't need to embellish any of them, but I'm sure some of them got a little extra twist. And some of the mothers thought, well, that's it. My son ain't going with you down there. So grandfather was off limits.
No, you weren't off limits. Joseph went with you to Guatemala, and
And-
he had an absolute blast. In fact, when we asked what was your high point, one of his high points was someone said they liked your shirt, so you took it off and you handed it to him. And all of the kids were talking about, Grandpa, you've got the coolest grandpa. So that was pretty neat.
Bob, how does, if I can ask a couple bold questions here.
Yeah.
Talk about God and family, and you're at this potentially this turning point.
I'm dying. I'm going to heaven. Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about your faith
Well,
in all this.
really, God, family, and country puts it all together. And in the Baltimore Catechism, you know, which we study when we were kids, God made me to know Him, to love Him, to serve Him in this world, which I think I've done, and to be happy with Him forever in the next. That's where I'm going. So I've fulfilled part of, you know, what it is, and I've earned my way, or whatever. They say you can't earn your way. Well, you can't, but whatever. I think I'll make it. So because all of these things were so much together, you know, we were always a God-fearing, church-going, loving family, and it was not just something that you did on Sunday. It was a part of our core being that, you know, it all just meshed together. And these guys have taken what my dad taught me and brought it to, you know, a new heights. For example, Matt had one of his sons, and he was out making a call and had to have something for the son to do. So he says, "We'll get in the pool over there, you know, the March Madness pool, 16." So he gets in there and he signs up, and he wins. What, $1,100?
Yeah,
Well, you tell it.
He won $1,140. My friend just said, "Hey, you haven't gotten into my pool yet." Then I thought, well, I got to talk business. I'll give him $25. My son will fill out this deal, and he picked Duke to win. And then everybody laughed, and everybody else picked KU to win. And he was in 5th place going into the Final Four, but he was the only one with any Final Four teams in it. So he went from 5th, and then Duke won. He just won by 2 points at first place. So he got $1,100. Then we took 1,000 of it and put it in the bank, and he knows that you tithe with the money and 10%, and so he had $140. Mom didn't know it was $1,140, so he thought he got an extra 40 for, you know, to spend discretionally. But he overheard my wife talking to Lourdes, a friend of the family, because a Guatemalan friend of hers was getting married last weekend, Saturday, and he was checking, because we have 4 boys, seeing if we had a suit his size. And we didn't have any suits his size, and she was saying, well, I guess he'll have to get married without a suit. And then my son came down with all of his money that he had, which was about $150, $160, and he said, I'd like for Stefan to get married in a suit. So he gave it to Mom, and then Sandy gave it to the Lourdes, who was asking for the money, and then said he could do it. He didn't want anybody to know about it, but the story's been told quite a few times. Run of big groups, but you know, money. We've always tried to teach the kids that money is just, it doesn't really exist outside of the fact that people give it more credit than it deserves, and money's just it comes and it goes, and what it really is there for is to create memories, to help people, to provide for your family. And beyond that, when you start grabbing at money, you lose something. You lose a lot. So people are always holding on or losing in the process. That's what I learned from.
Well, yeah, it's like I've learned that, having a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Well, when you look at our card, and this is a sales card. This is, what they go out and they call on people, and number one, God and family come first, and then it goes on to the fact that we'll treat all people, well and kindly, and govern our business according to Christian Judeo principles. And they were both out of town, and we are members of a group of Accelerant, which deals with mid-level businesses. And so I got to talk, because we give a spiel, about it. And I just mentioned that we're all in the same business together, and we have to learn how to get this business from generation to generation to generation. 65% of businesses don't make it past second, 90% don't make it past third, and then I introduced Matt's, one of Matt's children, and that's our secret weapon, the third generation. But I told him, I said that they made a study, and people found out that you would think with all of the helps that we have, CPAs, certified planner, lawyers, that we could do a lot better job. And what they found out was that in those instances where they got past those bumps, second and third generation, it was because it went back to, they adhered to values that went back to several generations. Didn't have anything, didn't talk about business other than values. And we're a values-oriented business, family, whatever. We tithe, but that's the bottom, to us. A tithe is a tenth, but stewardship's what you do with all the rest of it. And these guys are so incredibly gifted, as are the girls, that whatever God gives you, you just got to do the best you can with it. So God gives us all different talents. We do different things with them, and but it isn't like we leave home and we leave behind family values, or we go to the office and we put on another suit of clothes for the office, and one for this and one for that. We're pretty transparent all the way through. We are what we are, and we have always just lived that way. And people say, you've done such a great job and all that. And I said, yeah, maybe I have, but the talents that God gives each and every one of us are different and unique. And even though they're brothers and sisters, their talents are different, and Carol's and mine. So have we fully utilized the talent? I mean, okay, I've done a great job. All right. But maybe I should have done twice as good. Maybe I really did not live up to what God gave me, because I am so much more talented than I ever exhibited, and I loafed. I mean, maybe I goofed off and loafed through. I hope that isn't the case. But, so in different, and I would tell people I have had very few new ideas, but I can sit and listen to people and say, that ought to work. And Treese had some friends over the other night, and I was just talking to him, and one girl said, I've always had these great ideas, but I could never get them to work. I said, I never had any great ideas, but I could make other people's work. And I don't hesitate to ask, for money, because I'm not asking for me. I mean, God knows, maybe maybe I should have raised twice as much money. I don't know.
Well, people sometimes turn around and go the other way when they see Bob coming.
I know that, because we had to raise money to build a new art gallery over there,
they'd see me coming, and boy, it's like,
Yeah.
because it was, I would go with Sister Olive,
Oh, yeah.
and you know,
Well,
she's
you
a
know,
trooper.
our next door neighbor is a dentist. And of course, I've been involved with Rockhurst. And one day night, it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and the admissions director at Rockhurst called and he said, I've got 10 students in from Kosovo, and I don't have any money, and they haven't been fed. Can I bring them out? And I said, yeah. You know, and that's when they had all those, and the Jesuits took in it, I don't know how many, all of them. So bring these 10 students in from Kosovo, you know. And so, you know, we put some food on and we get the Kellys over here from next door, you know. Well, a couple months later or so, I get a call from Rockhurst, and some of these kids, terrible teeth, and said, do you think we could take them over to see Neil? I said, sure, I'll call him up. So he takes them over, and so Neil takes care of me. He says, Bob, he says, these people have any money? I said, no. He said, how are we going to get paid? I said, well, I'll help a bit. And I said, Neil, sometimes it's just expensive to live next door to the Millers. But, you know, I have never done anything of any consequence or value by myself. There, you know, it's always been other people who were there to collaborate, you know, with us and to do these things. And I have no way of, I mean, that's one thing to come and ask God, you know, how did I get all these things done? Where'd you get all those people to help, you know? Because I'm just a guy, and I say it truthfully, I'm a guy that sold insurance, Kansas City. Now, how do you get to all these other places? I know that whatever it is I think of God, I'm wrong. I mean, you know, because we cannot come close to grasping, you know, all that God is. I mean, you know, everything emanates from Him. And I don't try to outguess Him. I mean, you know, I don't know why it is that, you know, I'm okay one day and I'm not okay the next day. And I don't question it. And I don't question also the fact that there is a hereafter. Now, when it comes to pass, it'll come to pass. But the logic of it, and God is not a logic, He doesn't need logic. That's a human thing. The logic is they're not treating the cancer anymore, they're treating the pain. So the cancer is continuing to grow, so I'm just going to die. Well, that's fine, and that's as it is, and I really want it to be because everybody's got all these wonderful stories about me. And that's all I'm hearing, wonderful stories, good stories, you know. But they're going to run out of those, and they're going to dig deeper, and they're going to come up and they say, well, you know, he did this, and he wasn't all that good, for God's sakes. So I want to go before they get to the other bad stories. You know, you kind of got the bell curve, and I'm going to feel like I'm on the top of the curve, and I want to get out of here before they start on the other side of the stories.
When you were kind of out of it
Yeah.
last weekend, did you have any visions or anything?
Never had anything. I either hurt or I didn't hurt. I mean, you know, I'm a very, very basic human being, you know. And
Boys, I want you to tell the story, one of you, about Dad and his pain level.
Oh. Yeah, the doctors, we went to the doctor's office and they say, what's your pain level on a scale of 0 to 10? With, you know, now he had thought that 10 meant Jesus dying on the cross.
that's
I'm
a
not
10
sure.
minute.
I'm not sure where that one came from. And he said, "Oh, about a what'd you say, a 4 or 5?
Yeah, 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know.
3, 4, 5, something like that." So we looked, and there's actually a wall chart there, and it's got like a smiley face over here under the 1, and a guy over here with a frown and tears coming down his eyes at 10. But then they give some descriptions, and like 3 and 4, where you were describing, was where the smiley face kind of goes to a straight face. And it said, unable to perform a few duties, and then it gets to the end.
Can do most activities
Oh, yeah,
with
he's got-
rest periods. That's number 4, and then number 5 is unable to do, or 5 to 6, unable to do some activities because of pain, and then 7, unable to do most activities because of pain. Then 9 to 10, unable to do any activities because of pain. And then we said, well, Dad, since we're carrying you to the bathroom and holding you up while you go to the bathroom,
We're gonna
you're
put you at
probably
9 to
going to
10.
have to qualify as a 9 or a 10. It's not, you know, you're not over there with the smiley face to the half smiley face, you know.
We had a guy here who does some of the books, you know, on different projects I'm in, and this was one of my really foggy days, and Carol had him, and he's taken me into the bathroom. He said, "Hey, I realize I'm a member of the family." He says, "But I don't want to be this big a member. Call your boys. There are some things they ought to."
You know, my dad, you were talking about God. He used to always say to me, there's only two things you need to know about God. There is one, and you ain't him.
Yeah. That's one answer.
Yeah.
Well, you know, let me ask, because, I mean, we talk a lot about me, but I am impacted on by all the people that, you know, that we intermingle into our life, and what my wife would think about it, or what the kids would think, or where do we go from here, you know, what happens to the Miller tradition, and how does it, like, her folks, you know, are wonderful parents, you know, and Joe Shaughnessy built more Catholic things around, and it's not just me and it's all of us together, but the impact that we can have in that area. When I talked, you know, and gave that little talk about, you know, the fact that it's values and priorities and that. I mean, these guys all stood up. I mean, I had 300 people in the room, and all I did was tell them what I thought, you know, what ought to happen. And they're all standing up, and they got a lot of complimentary, you know, things that were. So where do we go from here? I mean, what happens to that I got, that I'm giving to them, that, you know, how do you guys see it? I mean, I just think we have an awesome responsibility because of our many, many gifts, you know, to impact and influence on it, and not just your family. And I just, every day in every way, you know, you run into people, and of course I'll say somewhat facetiously, you know, somebody said, well, you know, how can you be so nice? And I said, you know, God's pretty powerful. He can do anything he wants, you know. So for all I know, you might be God, or that one might be God, and I don't want to treat him bad. Now, you know, the next face I see on the other side, oh, smart Alec Miller, huh? You didn't think much of me being a ditch digger, huh? So if you kind of look at everybody like, you know, they are, first of all, of course, created by God, and they're our brothers and our sisters, and they were made in the image and likeness of God, and that is difficult sometimes to comprehend, given the Adolf Hitlers, you know, and a sister, Mother Teresa's, and all. So I like to.
Okay, well, if you want me to, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have, and that's why on our business card we've got God and family come first. Yeah. Okay, our cards say God and family come first, and so what we're saying there, I guess, is that it doesn't stop Sunday at Mass. I mean, our faith is a part of work, it's a part of our family, it's a part of everything, and I hope that's the same for our kids. And I think that's a real big challenge. You work with kids all the time, and there's a lot of incongruity between their professed beliefs in God and the music they listen to, the TV and movies they watch, the things they read, the way they behave, and it's challenging to, for us to impart that to our kids and for them to live a life that's consistent with their faith. But I think that this society needs that more than ever before, because look at all the stuff that's going on right now. In 2008, 9, 10, all of the financial crises and everything else. I mean, if you had people that lived by those beliefs and lived their life that way, you wouldn't have all the problems we've got. You really wouldn't. So, because one of the things we did at our agency a long time ago is we started a not-for-profit practice, so we insure more nonprofits than anybody in town. And I've kind of run that, and so I work with all of these people that work with hunger and with kids with all kinds of problems and with disabled people and everything. That to me, it seems like if you had good families, you'd solve 99% of those problems. You just flat would, and it'd be cheap. You wouldn't have to have the government coming in and taking care of all of these things and trying to figure out all these programs. You'd have parents who really loved their kids and took the time to try and work that out. So I guess, you know, it's as much as anything, what Dad gave us and Mom gave us is a good core value system and a priority, and we've placed that priority, and we've tried to live that in our marriages, in our families, in our communities, in our business, and everything that we do. It's kind of hard to do, you know, when you think about, you know, because, you know, if you just look at the media, I mean, our belief system's not winning, you know, so you've really got to, it's a challenge. It's very,
Well, it's
of course,
countercultural.
As a parent, every day is a teaching moment. Everything is a teaching moment, you know. So that's, I think what we've got is to build a legacy. If you can have people that believe that way. People, that's why they stood up and clapped for you, Dad, because it's uncommon, unfortunately. Immorality is normal. High levels of character and morality is uncommon, unfortunately, but people recognize it and appreciate it. So.
Well, the Jesuits, you know, one for others. And the Jesuit motto, and we have a little foundation called AMDG, Ad Majorem Dei Gloriam, that, you know, where we, you know, give to different, you know, charitable
I don't
things.
know what that means, though. They don't
Well,
know
for the
that.
greater glory of God. That's the old Latin. If you know, I had 6 years of Latin, 2 years of Greek and all, but that's their motto, for the greater glory of God. And we have ours down at the Greater Kansas City Community Foundation. Matt's got his own foundation, you know, that he has. And we just think you reach out and you do as much as you can possibly do for others. But in order for this to happen, you have to have people who are self-reliant. I mean, these guys, I could throw them out on the street. They never needed the Miller Insurance Agency to make a living because they knew how to work and they knew how to do things. And the girls, we are developing within the family very, very self-reliant people. And I have to ask Matt, when they talked about an allowance, yeah, you got to get that one.
Well, I'm there.
Yeah.
This is really good. We got it. This is insane.
Well, he talked about he could throw us out on the street and we'd make do. He did throw Sean out on the street, but he can tell his kids what that was for. But Dad made us pay for everything. We had to pay to go to Rockhurst High School, and at the time I didn't want to go to Rockhurst High School, but Dad said, "No, you will go there and you will pay for it, you know, while you go there." And it was $1,000 a semester back in 1980, or a year.
$1,100
a year. $1,000. I was there when it went over. So for my kids, education has gone up a lot more in cost than, you know, at that time. And Rockhurst is $10,000, and it's kind of hard for a ninth grader to make $10,000. So we figured out a way where we would charge them to live in the house. So, because otherwise the kids end up with so much excess money that they don't appreciate money. So, start out freshman year, it's $10 a week for the year, and then sophomore year it goes up to 20, then 30, 40. And I did a little kicker since things were unfair between boys and girls in my house when we grew up. The boys, it went up a little bit more because they could cut lawns, they could do some stuff that they could make a little more money. So they got up to where it's $60 a week.
Except
And
Laura probably has more money than all of them
Laura
put
has,
together.
yes, Laura's done well. So then we're at a just a party at a friend's house, and they said, "What's everybody paying for allowances to their kids?" And some kids are getting $5 a week, some are getting $10 a week, and they have basic chores. And then they said, I didn't say anything because I knew they wouldn't understand. So then one of the parents said, "What are you doing, Matt?" And I go, "Well, our kids pay us." They go, "How's that work?" I said, "Well, and I told them how much, and they go, "How in the world are your kids buying into that?" And I go, "You only have to sell the first one on it. All the rest of them know that it's just the way it is around here." And as a matter of fact, after that day, I told the kids, and then ever since then, they've been calling it their reverse allowance. So my oldest is 23, and she's just went to work for the agency, but she said, now really about a year ago, she said, "Dad, you're taking this money and you're putting it aside and back to us, aren't you, when we graduate?" I said, "No." That's my spending money. That is not.
I would do that.
Yeah. So no reverse allowance, and then when they go to college, they pay what the state tuition is to go to KU or K-State, and then if they get accepted to Notre Dame or whatever, and we feel that's a good place for them to go, then we pay the difference. So there isn't a.
Well, tell them about Amber, how long it took Amber to get through and with her.
Well, the other thing is that if they graduate early, I said it's expected that you get out in 4 years. If you get out a semester early, then you get a $5,000 bonus. If you get out, Amber calls me up and then she says, "Hey, I know I get $5,000 if I get out, a semester early. What if I get out 2 semesters early?" And I said, "Well, I guess that would be $10,000. So she graduated in 3 years from Loyola University. So.
Millers are not all that smart, but they are determined. I mean, Matt, he didn't have the highest grades, but he got through school, and it goes back to, the C students hire the A's and the B's, and they're going through all my papers and all that, and they got my grades.
Well, wait a second. I want to ask him this. Focus on my dad, because y'all want to see. We were going through the safe when we thought Dad was dying and everything, and then Sean pulls out his report card, and he had a 2.2 GPA, and he got an A in one class, 3 Ds, but one. What was the A in?
Catholic marriage, and it took me 9 years to get married.
That's in college.
I never hired anyone that was a college graduate that had a lower GPA than I did. You can't hardly get out of school with a lower one.
But you
Until you hired
graduated
Matt.
every year.
Until you hired Matt.
Till I hired Matt.
Hey, I was on the dean's list in college. In
That's
high school, I was an absolute.
Yeah,
Bad
high
student.
school. Tell them what they told you in high school.
Oh,
Maybe you're not cut out.
No,
for
no,
this
no,
school.
no, no. Didn't you have to get like a? Didn't they say you can't graduate from here until you get a 2.0?
Rogers.
Yeah, my senior year, I had to at least get a 2.0.
One semester.
Well, they wanted it both semesters.
Uh-oh.
So
Did they get it?
Challenging.
I got every grade they ever asked me to get.
No
They just
more, no
started
less.
out real low when they started asking.
Well,
Okay, can I ask you a question?
sure.
Why did you start the agency?
Why'd you start your own business? You were working at McGee's. I'm sure you're probably doing fine.
Well,
No, I was 2 years old, so you probably were wanting to get out of the house or something.
Thomas
huh?
McGee's.
Yeah, he worked at Thomas McGee and
Yeah,
Son
okay.
for right out of Rockers.
well, I don't know. I just thought when I came back from the service, when I started out, I did poor. They didn't have a program. When I was 20 years old when I got out of college, didn't know from Sikkim, and I worked down there a couple years, went in service, and came back. They didn't offer me as a job as an employee. They did not hire me back. They said you could become an independent broker, which meant I was not an employee of theirs. And I thought, well, they don't think I can make it. And so anyway, after a couple years or so, I thought, well, I might as well go do it myself. And
So you did you work at McGee's and then went to the service
and then
and then came back and they didn't offer you a job back and you started your own agency?
no, I went down to McGee's in '49, went into service in '51,
Okay.
got back in '53, and there's a difference between if you were an employee.
So you were an
And
independent contractor.
I was an independent contractor. And I thought, well, I might as well be an independent contractor on my own because they didn't think I was going to make it anyway. So I I just did because, you know, why did I do anything? I just woke up one morning and thought I ought to do my own thing.
So you were sharing some of the revenue with them, though, as an independent contractor. You had a book built up, and then you said, "I'll just do this on my own."
Right.
Was Mom your first employee, or
Your mother?
yeah?
No.
Your
No.
wife.
Nope. I had a lady that came out with me from McGee's, had worked down there with me. And the first year in business, my gross commissions, and we had 2 kids, third on the way, office secretary, whole 9 yards, $19,000 were my gross commissions, not my net.
Then you had to pay an employee out of that.
I paid an employee out of that. I paid rent out of that.
But I stayed up late at night typing things for you and doing work. Yes, I was.
You were an employee.
But I didn't get
Well-
any money for
Well,
it.
tell us about how your employment ended at the
Yes.
agency.
Well, I am not very good at accounting, but when my children were in high school, he needed somebody to do the books and collect the payments that people were not paying commissions, and so he hired me as a bookkeeper. And that money was our grocery money. But what, you hit $1 million, the agency, and
I don't-
decided I was not, I didn't know where the decimal points were on, I still don't. So he said, he fired me.
I fired my mother.
Fired me.
You
My
fired your mother.
wife-
How'd you fire your mom? Where'd you
I
fire-
told,
I didn't know she worked for you.
I didn't.
she, well, she did. She'd do some dictation and that, and I told her mother, I said, you know, you just need to rest a little bit more. Yeah.
And not get paid for it.
Not get paid. And I can remember we went out with some folks one time and customers, and this guy was saying, well, with all the money you're making, you know, Bob, how come you don't buy your wife a big fur coat? And she pipes up and she said, if people like you'd pay their bills, maybe he would. And I got a check within a week.
Let me ask you this:
Sounds fucking-
when you first got in the business,
Yeah.
did you ever take? Did you ever suffer from call reluctance?
To the day I got out of the business. And, you know,
Talk about call because I coming from that background on a different side. I mean, call reluctance was something that just
give him a pillow, can you?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
that just you know it was tough.
Well, it was difficult. And in those days, I'd walk down the streets out there like 75th and Row and that, you know, and they didn't have homeowners. The mortgage company would usually write the fire policy on the home. You get a fire policy on the contents, a burglary policy on the contents, and these are $5 and $10 and $20 policies. Personal liability, which was $11, and automobiles were something like,
So you sold door to door?
I walked door to door down the street at night after people,
When they got home.
when they got home. And I was selling stuff that I had no, you know, they had no training program. They had nobody to go. I'll bet I didn't make a half a dozen calls with anybody in the office. And I got down there and they said, here, we got this book, and they gave me a book to read. I mean, they sent $10 down to Jeff City, and that was, I got licensed. And I read the book, and then I said something about some kind of a course, correspondence or something. Good idea, Bob, take it. So I got a correspondence course, and I you know, just went from one thing to the other, and
That's what you were doing at McGee's, was
Yeah.
personal lines too?
yeah,
Oh, so you didn't sell to businesses until later?
not until I got, you know, I made $175 a month. What do you expect? I had no allowance,
Kick that.
and no car,
No financing plan.
no financing plan. I was the most ill-equipped individual that ever hit the stage, I think. And how in God's name, I mean, getting married is the best thing in the world for me because I didn't care about money, didn't need any money. Kara got money and she said, got married, and she would, here's a child, pay. You know, here's 2 children.
Well, you
Pay.
borrowed money to go on our honeymoon. you were 30 years old and you didn't have any money. And I said,
Wait
well,
a
if you're
second,
getting married, you better start, well, he put new windows on your folks' house and you just gave it all away.
Well, I didn't need it.
So he didn't need it, so he gave it all away.
Tell them
So
about when
tell
you
me-
met Grandfather Shaughnessy and you had one car and then you had another car the next time you picked
Well,
him up.
I did.
It's mean to my father.
I had, you know, we were engaged in this, and my brother Dick got married, and he didn't. He and his wife had a real. You're gonna knock your camera off. Beat up old jalopy. So they go on their honeymoon, and they took my car, and I took the jalopy. So I come over to pick up Carol, and he said, "What happened to your car?" Well, spur of the moment, I said, you know, you miss one payment with these people, then they come and grab it from you. And so,
I lived in Mission Hills. He was coming to Mission Hills to pick me up.
and so anyway, Dick goes on a honeymoon, and he comes back, and she lived, Burnett lived in St. Paul, Kansas, a little town down there. So they need to go down and pick up stuff that her folks are going to give her. So they take my car, and I got the jalopy again. Well, in the meantime, I'd gotten the car back, and I said, got caught up on the payments, Joe. And so then Dick takes the cards again and said, missed one payment, and they do that to you. And so, anyway,
Father
You gotta
didn't take,
understand
he did
grandfather.
not take jokes. He was the most serious guy too.
he'd come, I'm coming in whatever gear I've got, and he'd come to the door in a suit and a tie. You know,
To the day he died, he wore a suit and tie every single day. You know, we'd pick him up just to come over here for dinner on the weekends, and he'd wear a coat and tie.
But
He's a great
Bob,
guy, great guy.
Bob went up to him to ask for my hand in marriage. And
this was after we were engaged.
my father was shoveling something in the garden, and he looked at Bob and picked up the shovel, and Bob
Put it over
thought
his
he was
shoulder. Oh, I
gonna-
thought he was going to hit me with
Yeah,
it. Oh my God, I'm dead.
and he just turned around and walked away from
I
him.
never got
He
permission.
never got
Never got-
You didn't? Well, tell them about
And
your
no,
first
no,
date
and then
with
at
Dad.
your
Yeah.
like, wasn't it like your 40th wedding anniversary? And then we were telling stories, and we said, "Well, grandfather, will you get permission now that Bob's done all this?" And he says, "Oh, never said anything. Didn't answer."
How did you guys meet? I don't know if I've ever
Church.
heard this one. At
No,
church.
let me tell you. We were at Rockhurst. It was an alumni barbecue deal, and it was in the summertime. And she had a date with this guy, huge guy, Rich, something.
Mickey Himmel.
I call him Mickey Helen. Anyway, and I was looking at her, and they introduced, and then a little later in the evening, why I got her kind of over the side, and I was talking. I said, you know, I just know I've seen you somewhere or something. We couldn't figure it out. Well, what happened was, she was between junior and senior year at Fontbonne, and every morning she'd come up to St. Francis Xavier and go to Mass in the morning, early Mass. And she would come in the front of the church, go to communion, and then she'd leave. Well, I was in the back of the church because I went to Mass every morning, and I would see her up there, and I would see her go to communion, and I'd think, well, that's a pretty nice looking girl. But I never met her. I mean, we were 20 pews apart, so to speak. And so we finally narrowed it down to that's what had happened. I'd seen her come to, you know, to Mass in the morning, and she had never seen, she wasn't interested in seeing me, but I thought she was pretty cute. And so we went from that, and then didn't see her again until the next year. And we used to play beer ball at Rockhurst every Sunday. We had the lower campus, and nobody could get on except us. And Paul Quigley was a great friend of mine, and we'd go over to Luce Park after, and they had the musicals in those. I don't know if they still do. And we'd talk about it, and then they'd go to the musical and take a tub of beer. And I said, what do you got today? And he said, well, I got a date with Carol Shaughnessy. Carol Shaughnessy. I said, God, she's cute. I remember her. So I went home, and I lived closer, so I called her before he got home and asked her out, and she mistakenly thought I was somebody else, and so we went out together. Anyway, so third date I asked her to marry me. She got mad. And
Third date?
um,
What happened on those first 2 dates that made you
Well, I
think
don't
you
even
had
know
a
if I-
shot at her?
But anyway, she got mad and she said no, and furthermore, I'm not going to date you. I'm not going to do this, and then don't ever, So there were a lot of weddings going on. Both her sister and her brother got married that summer. It's just the inner Catholic community. And I went home one day and I had a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, and I just scratched, tore it little things about as big as your fingernail. And I wrote her a letter and I said, well, I saw you again and I really want to talk to you and that, but write you a letter, but I knew it'd make you angry, so I tore it up. And I had all these little pieces of paper in there and mailed it to her.
Because I tried to put it together.
She and her mother spent half an afternoon.
Not my mother.
It didn't have anything on it.
Charleston.
And so finally she said one day, okay, I'll go out, but none of that stupid talk again. Okay? So that was, the third date was like July 4th, and then I did in August wasn't much. And it was sometime through August, and I dated her a couple more times, and I brought her home one Saturday night, and I would kind of move over in the seat, and give her a little squeeze, and I'm moving over there, and I'm about to give her a little squeeze and a little kiss. And she said, well, I've thought about it, and the answer is yes. And I thought, oh, what the shit's a question? Because we hadn't talked about it since she said no. So that was our official.
Mom, tell him what your sign was for remember that you were
Well,
going
I
to.
always prayed to Saint Teresa the Little Flower, and I got messages from her by receiving a rose, and actually, on my birthday is on the feast of Saint Teresa the Little Flower, so I do a novena, and I guess my novena this one time before I met Bob was to meet the person I was going to marry. And on my birthday, 2 of the 3 guys that I mentioned that I might want one of them asked me out. And so I said, oh, now I've got my answers to my prayers. Well, actually, one of the dates is where I met Bob. But then he takes me out the first date you took me to, we went to a drive-in theater. Well, in those days you went to drive-in theaters. And they had roses climbing on the wall before you got into the theater. And I said, oh, look at all those beautiful roses. And Bob said, I'll get you one. And he jumped out of the car.
Stopped the car in the middle of traffic.
And I went, oh God, no, Jesus, no.
Not this one.
Not this guy, St. Teresa, he isn't in it. With that, a whistle blew, and a policeman was saying, oh, don't do that. I said, oh, thank you.
But he had the rose.
No, he didn't get it that time.
Oh, he didn't get
But
it that time.
he gave me the rose quite a few times.
Well, what happened is she said, yeah, I'll marry you, but, you've got to do something first. I said, like what? She said, I can't tell you. And I said, well, am I engaged or not engaged? I mean, you're engaged if you do what you're supposed to do, but, so I'm thinking, what is it I'm supposed to do? I mean, this is a kind of a relationship, I'm always in a fog and a mystery, And so when we came out of St. Teresa over at 59th in Michigan, they had a rose, and I turned around and handed it to her, and she said, that's it.
Oh.
That's how we got engaged. We got this house because I went broke, and that's too long a story. But I mean, everything, we back into situations instead of,
Okay.
I want to just look at me and just talk a little.
Well, I just see it as a seamless garment. I mean, going back to God made us to know Him. I mean, we are creatures of God, and He made us to know Him, love Him, and serve Him in this world. Okay, that's, in my opinion, that's what I've done, and to be happy with him forever and the next. And so it's just a continuation, and there's a continuation, you know. And I've just done what a human being does, and I've just had a wonderful, wonderful life, and I'm passing into that last and best phase of all of human existence, which you know, I'm a visitor here on earth, and now I'm going to that home which God created for me, which I'll live in all eternity. I mean, you know, so I'm 80 years old, which is a speck on the side of a mountain, you know, but I'm going to spend an eternity with God, and it's just what I was destined for, you know, and I've had such a wonderful life, and I want to have a wonderful death, and I am. I mean, you know, these people are coming, and we're having wonderful stories, and just it's been the way I think God intended for us to live, and that's the way I feel about it. I mean, no regrets, no nothing, and sure, I'll leave, and Carol and the kids will be here, but we're all going to get back together again, and you know, in that place for which we were intended and ultimately destined to go.
So no regrets of things left undone. Then.
You know, my only regret is if God has a regret that I didn't do something I should have done, but I don't know what it is. So at this time, don't interject. You know, any problematicals in there that I haven't thought of. I just don't need. I mean, I look at these kids and you know, what they've done and the way they've raised and their children, and I think, wow, that is such a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I'm so proud of you know, the children and the grandchildren, and I'm thinking, what a legacy, I mean, you know, and I really feel if I send these guys ahead and you know, and say, okay, here are my kids. Did I do a good enough job raising them that I deserve to get to heaven? And if I haven't done a good enough job to get to, you know, with them, then I don't deserve it. But I really think we did. So we, you know, I think we've done what God intended for us to do. And that's about as much as I can say about, you know, you believe in God, you believe in heaven, you believe in, you know, all these beliefs. So if we have lived out our beliefs, why in the world would I have a moment of regret? Or now, as I say, you know, we're fallible and human. God's infallible and God, and I want to get His opinion on it. I mean, it's me, I, and all these things are about me and what, you know, what a great guy I am and a wonderful thing. But I would say, okay, this is the way we're going to do it. You know, you guys are going to work and you're going to do this. And then I'd leave. Well, who do you think was left with actually enforcing all of these mandates, if you will? And that's Carol. And there isn't any doubt in my mind that there were times when I was, you know, doing too much outside and not enough inside in leading things for her, you know, to take care of and to do all the mop-up work. But one of the nicest things was Matt wrote me a letter, and he was telling me about a deal, and, you know, which really touched me. So you remember what you said? That,
Which deal?
well, it was.
You can never do a bad deal with Dad?
He always said that, you know, he said that I never wanted to get the best of a deal. I didn't want to be, you know, I wanted to have a deal I could live with. I mean, and, you know, I'm not going to give the shop away. But I wasn't trying to get a better deal from you than I could get. I knew what my limitations were. And I'm as guilty of that as anybody ever was. Believe me, I left far too much to Carol to raise them, and I was out saving the world. I've saved the world so many times, you know, and she had to save the kids. She had to preserve the family tradition. She had, you know, she had to do all these things, while I'm saving the world. And there were times because when I was in the insurance business, I always had a couple of jobs. I mean, you know, I was in insurance and I was a presiding county agent. I wrote contractors' newsletters and I did all kinds of things. And she's the one, I mean, I could leave home Monday morning, and because I taught Monday and Wednesday night, if something happened Tuesday, it'd be Thursday before I saw the kids again, literally. And she was the one that you know, had to stay behind. And, you know, in the Gospels, Martha and Mary, you know. So just what you said about what your wife said about you, Carol certainly could have said, you know, about me that, you know, you spend too much of your time saving the rest of the world and not taking care of your stuff closer to home. Yeah.
Although Sean and I were tired of him by Monday because we had spent the whole weekend cutting firewood with him, and so we were fine. We would,
Yeah,
we
they
would
were
go
fine
away
with
and
me
then
being gone.
We'd drive a half an hour to go cut wood, and you'd just smell gas and oil the whole way down there, and then work all day long, and then come back, and then
But the
We were-
reward was always Sneed's barbecue.
Sneed's barbecue.
Sneed's barbecue.
And a 58 out.
I
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Holmes. They had those brownies.
Oh, yeah.
Back before burn ends were burn ends, they just had chunks of charred meat, and that spicy sauce was great. So,
Yeah. Well, here's another
oh yeah,
secret weapon.
this is a third generation Shaughnessy.
Shaughnessy.
And she'll come and she'll help save and preserve, you know, all that is Miller.
That's right. Yeah, we're getting ready to drive
First-
to Minnesota right now.
First, figure
To
out
look
what
at a
college to
college.
go to.
They're driving right out of here and they're driving up to Minneapolis.
North of
From here.
Minneapolis,
Right.
actually. Right
Now.
now.
Now?
Yeah, right now. So I'm going to change into my sweat. Shaughnessy, you can sit down here and you can say all of those things they were saying is a bunch of BS. So
Yeah, that's what.
It's okay.
I don't
I'd
think
have
she
to be
will.
in there.
Shaughnessy, you can
Yeah.
talk about how it's
I don't
impacted
think-
you.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't even-
the one thing that I was going to say about the core
They'll have
values.
to leave pretty quick.
On the core values, Dad, when we decided to put the core values down on paper, really stemmed out of a business class that I went to, and the business class said, if you're always doing your performance reviews based on rules and regulations, and then you're missing it because people can't remember all the rules. But if they are operating, thinking about values, you can remember a few values. And if we value hard work and we value helping out, we value taking care of the customer and all these, and I go, oh, that's great. So then Sean and I started working on our core values. But it was a business application that we started this whole core values. And then we said, well, what do we value most? And we go, well, God and family, that comes first. And then we were thinking, gosh, but can we put that on our business card? And we're going, well, okay, well, that is what we value the most. And then we went through this whole struggle about separating work from play and home and weekends. And then we decided you can't. If you're actually at work and with all these fellow associates more in a week than you are with your family. So if you strip out everything that you think is important and you're just talking about business only, then you've lost it. You've lost the real meaning and the value in life. So we went through, and then we started with God and family come first, and then we ended with we will at all times, operate according to all these values and those set out by Judeo-Christian values. And it's really caught on. We told anybody can put it on their card or not put it on their card, and everybody has it on their card. We have 50 associates, and when we interview people, we go, well, you got to tell you, we pray before meetings, and we also here's our values, and we let them read it, and if they're grimacing and stuff like that, we usually take note of that before we hire them. But that's what we've started out on that process with the core values. I don't even think you knew that,
I
Dad.
didn't. I really didn't. It was there one day, the core values and the card, and I'm looking at it, and of course my title is Director of Corporate Giving. And that's important to us. Matt and Sean and myself, we all three, give. Then the corporation gives, and we have AMDG gives, and then Matt has. So we've got and we kind of do a spreadsheet because we've got so many. He has his church and he has his school and that, but there's a lot of them commonality that that come together. It's a big thing at Miller Agency how we. Give serious consideration to what's the best possible use of our time and talents in that. I mean, it just permeates the whole place. And I remember one time we had a new fellow, Dan Harrison, came with us, and we were trying to get an appointment with this fellow, and he's in and out of town and all around. And I said, he said, I can see you Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. And I told Dan, I said, well, we finally got an appointment 10 o'clock Saturday. He says, he said, I was going to go to my girls' soccer game. And I said, go to the soccer game. So I called the guy back and I said, we can't have an appointment because, we have God and family come first. God and family comes first. That's got to come first. And there's this long, awkward silence. Finally he says, good for you. Now, we never wrote the account, but I couldn't hardly, go and go contrary.
In the morning.